Welcome everyone to another episode of 10-Minute Poker Tips. Thank you for visiting my channel. Please like and subscribe. It would mean the world to me. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to go over, so I went really deep in a 1K high roller on America's Card Room. This is shortly after I busted day 2 of the Venom. Ended up finishing all the way in 5th, but there was actually one key hand that I screwed up massively with 2 tables left. This is very deep in a tournament, and I definitely cannot be making mistakes like this. So I thought it would be a good idea to review this on 10-Minute Poker Tips with all of you. This was with 2 tables left. We were 7-handed. It was 8 max 1K tournament. I was under the gun with 30 big blinds, and at this point in the tournament, I was actually second or third in chips, but basically I was top 3 chip stack. Mike Joseph, which I'm pretty sure is the Mike Joseph and just not a screen name. Very, very good tournament player. Was the chip leader at the time. So I raised on the gun with Queen Jack suited, which is standard. And then I get 3-bet by this player, nbd.aztec. And, I constantly do research on SharkScope for players that I'm playing that are at my table, especially for the higher limit ones, just to kind of check them out. Generally, this field was pretty soft with the remaining players because most people were actually losing players. There's only like maybe a third or less of the players were winning players. NBD Aztec actually didn't show up under ACR, which is WPN. I couldn't find them, but there is an NBD.Aztec on PokerStars. It's the exact same screen name with the exact same, capitalization with the Z and everything. So it seems unlikely this is just, like somebody different. But if this is the same person on PokerStars, they're very, very strong winning players, you can see. But even with that, with my reads on this player at the time, I could tell this player wasn't 3-betting light. From the hands that I saw, they always seemed to have a strong hand. Obviously, there were a couple of times where they raise folded, but this seemed pretty rare, and generally it seemed like this person kind of had the goods every time they had 3-bet, and especially down the stretch, I feel like this person is probably tightening things up a little bit. So Queen Jack suited is a very strong hand, and I generally don't think this is something that we should be folding to a 3-bet that often, but here in this situation, kind of really felt like I wanted to fold. It was, UTG, UTG1. This person had a middling stack, had not been playing that many hands, especially down the stretch with some ICM considerations. A lot of big stacks, sitting behind him that could kind of put him into a world of hurt. And obviously I have a very strong UTG range. So for all those reasons, and plus the 3-bet percentage seemed to be leaning a little bit more heavily towards, nutted hands, I didn't feel super compelled to call this, but then I just decided I would just call because I thought Queen Jack suited was too strong of a hand. And then basically what happened was, I flopped the queen high flop, and I decided to put max pressure on this person. So obviously everyone folded back to me. I called. I checked. This person bet, roughly at like a third pot, and decided to just rip it, and they snapped me off with pocket queen. So I was basically like almost drawing dead on the flop except for runner. So actually I did hit a backdoor gutter, but I didn't get there. But this was a humongous hand that put me all the way down to I don't know, was it 13, like 8 bigs or something like that? So this basically crippled me from a top 3 stack down to one of the short stacks. And this is just something kind of mistake that I cannot be making. I should just know. So let's jump over to GTO Wizard, and let's just take a look at what GTO Wizard thinks about Queen Jack suited in this type of situation. So this is set to ICM, roughly the same stack sizes, 2 tables left, 7-handed. You can see Queen Jack suited is obvious raise from under the gun along with all these other hands, low jack. So you can see that the low jack obviously has a very, very narrow range, especially with ICM considerations, especially with the stack, especially with their positions. And you can see here that the raising hands are very, very narrow. There's the only kind of bluffy type of things that you're doing here are with some of these ace 4 suited, ace 5 suited, and you can even see ace 5 and ace 7 are mostly just folds, ace 10 off, a little bit of a raise, but mostly just a fold. And then there's a couple of jams like littered in here at 20 bigs, but you can see how extremely tight this range is. Now it folds all the way back to me, and now to my surprise, Queen Jack suited is actually half of a fold. I would think that this would lean way more towards a call, but you can see that this is actually like 50% time a fold, 50% time a call. So while I didn't make a massive error here, I just do feel like with the dynamics and then this player, and also my chip stacking position and the weakness of the field, this is probably one of those ones that we can just kind of let go, especially if we end up just like basically risking our entire stack and we flop pretty good and this person actually has has a nutted hand, like exactly what happened. These are the type of pre-flop decisions that, we need to be making with like the field strength and all these other kind of dynamics and considerations in mind. So I do feel like this is actually a pretty big error on my part to have done this. Now, the reason why this was actually such a huge error is the very next hand. Here is what happened. Mike Joseph, who is the chip leader now, you can see I had 9 point. So I went from like, second or third in chips down to one of the bottom stacks with under 10 BBs. Mike Joseph raises 2 big blinds from middle position, or this is basically the hijack. Then it gets for the small blind, who had 7 bigs, and he just rips. And I have aces in the big blind. This is glorious, but now it's very upsetting to me that I actually only have 9 bigs here in case Joseph has a big hand. And Joseph is a very, very good player. I also think I'm not even sure if he knows like who I am specifically, but definitely from playing with me enough in this tournament, he knows that I'm a good aggressive tournament player. I'm pretty sure he's also shark scoped me and seen my results. So, for all those reasons, it's only, basically I have 3 more bigs in this. It seems super fishy to just flat. And I think if whether I flat or I raise, it doesn't matter. Joseph is either going to go with the hand or he isn't. So I decide just to rip it in, and Joseph does also then rip it in to basically put, so the small blind actually raised everything except for like half a BB or something. So everyone calls it off. And Joseph had ace king of diamonds, and this small blind unfortunately had 10s, got put in a really, really tough spot. Joseph actually turned a flush draw on the turn, and I'm a little bit surprised it didn't come in. Looking at this situation, I ended up basically almost tripling back to roughly where I was the previous hand, which is great. I'm like, oh, okay, so nothing happened on that previous hand. But really look at what happened. Joseph is not getting away with ace king of diamonds, even if I end up ripping 20 bigs. He's just not going to fold ace king of diamonds to me. So in this spot, I actually would have been the dominating chip leader here. Joseph, who is probably one of the best, if not the best player left in the field, ends up getting crippled all the way down, and then the entire complexion of this tournament changes. So we also have to think, and so this is what I mean about playing hands like this, is you have to think about future game, think about the field. Are you going to find better spots? Obviously, this is a cooler spot for Mike, for me to have aces against his ace king. But spots like this are going to come up, and also spots against worse players where they're just going to punch chips off to you effortlessly without you having to kind of think through something crazy like this. So I think in these type of situations and these type of spots, especially when I think this player is being much tighter from a 3-bit range perspective than they maybe even typically would be, I think I have to fold this hand pre-flop, not get myself into this type of situation post-flop. And if I do get into a top pair type of situation, I do think I need to be check calling this if I did continue on over into the flop, instead of just trying to put max pressure on this person and ripping them all in. Like, what am I even doing here? So overall, this hand was kind of a pretty bad mistake. But then when we look at really what happened, literally the next hand where this would have put me into the chip lead, potentially basically set me up for the win, I was kind of always middle stacking all the way through, the rest of this tournament through to the final table until I got it in, with like king 10 suited in the small blind against ace jack. To basically bust from a tournament in 5th. I cannot be making these type of mistakes, because these type of things come up, and this, is the difference between, what I ended up finishing in, and then it was something like 5x the amount from what I actually cashed in 5th to what ended up, being first place money. So yeah, I think this is an interesting, not just like one hand, but just interesting lesson that we have to learn about. Number one, I should just know that queen jack club, queen jack suited isn't something like an 80-90% call here. It's actually 50-50. I didn't know that. So I need to take more time, spend more time looking through spots. And then basically I'm not flipping a coin here. I very rarely ever randomize when I see something like this. I always take into consideration the opponent and their patterns and their dynamics and the dynamics of the tournament to basically choose between, a mixed strategy like this. But I definitely need to be leaning more towards a fold given everything that I was thinking, which, eventually basically cheated me out of a humongous hand with aces. Very next hand, which would have probably set me up for the win in this tournament. Anyways, I'm still glad that I was able to finish in 5th place more quickly than I thought I would have. I didn't exactly erase my losses from the World Series where I ran like super bad, but I basically clawed back most of my losses, which is really great. So then, we have to move on to the next one, make sure that we take our lessons and we learn them and we study them. And hopefully I'll be, taking a first place soon, whether it's live or online. So thank you everyone for watching. Thank you everyone for listening to my pain. If you like this content, please like and subscribe, and we will see you at the next one.